Good evening. Thanks for joining us. I'm Jason Zimmerman. Cyclists across the state came together for a day of solidarity for Alex Pretti, a Green Bay native killed during a dispute with ICE agents in Minneapolis just 1 week ago. Nearly 200 events took place nationwide, including those in Green Bay and Kaukauna. The First Alert update, Jamal James speaks to one of Pretti's close friends.
In the cold weather hitting northeast Wisconsin, cyclists took part in the We Ride in Unity Memorial to support Alex Pretti. Al Gonzalez rode the 10 miles along the Fox River because Pretti was close to him back in high school.
Maybe there's parts of you that are misunderstood, especially by others around you. Certain views that you see, but maybe others don't see it that way. And I think that's what him and I bonded over was the things that maybe made us feel a little bit alienated in school brought us together.
When he heard about the event, he dusted off his old bike because it was the least he could do when it comes to showing solidarity, when it comes to someone he considered a best friend.
Drive at nights, blasting music, singing music, playing video games, listening to classical music while we're playing video games. He'd come over to my family's carne asadas, and like he knew my family, just an overall around great person.
But this memorial wasn't the only demonstration that took place. Two local advocates also held a march in support of Pretti and against ICE operations. After Allison and Ashley Huntley saw the reactions from mainstream media, that's when they reached out to a number of organizations here in Green Bay because they say they wanted to advocate for someone who couldn't speak for themselves. Collaborating to bring a decent crowd from the Green Bay community within a week to push for change on how ICE operates.
Having better regulation on what's happening with ICE right now, holding them accountable for when they are doing arrests, making sure that violence doesn't happen, people don't suffer, holding our administration accountable for their actions as well.
Not everyone in the community was on board, with a few people driving by showing their opposing opinions. But no matter what people think, Gonzalez believes if Pretti still lived in the area, he would have been a part of something like this.
The way he saw the world was very strongly, and he would probably love to be here for it, but what he represents at this point is far greater than any of us.
In Green Bay, Jamal James, Action 2 News.